Hi guys, Ian here, aka Ahura Mantra. Welcome to my channel and to my day and to another video. And this video, I was just doing some decorating and I just found myself in my thoughts and felt an urge to make this video. So here I am, paint and all. And what prompted me to make this video was having conversations with a friend who at the moment is having some very worrying and troubling thoughts, and sometimes seems to become overwhelmed by them. And having a background in cognitive behavioural therapy, I have been trying to share with them some of the some of the key teachings of cognitive behavioural therapy, which I think are absolutely wonderful as means of understanding our thoughts and controlling those thoughts that need to be controlled. And it was in having those conversations that it made me think, well, yeah, perhaps we'll share this, may be useful to some other people, and other people may have thoughts as well that they would want to share with me. So again, completely unstructured, and so I'll probably go off on all sorts of tangents as I do, but in my work career I was lucky enough to be funded to undertake counselling training, which went on for much longer than I thought, and it ended up with me gaining a master's in cognitive behavioural therapy. And as a result of that process, working with many clients over many years. And the first thing I would say about my experience of cognitive behavioural therapy was that it had a fundamental and amazing effect on me personally. And it was because of the effect that it had on me that I was so engaged with it as a therapy model, and so keen to use and share it with other people. So one, I found the model to be incredibly fascinating and so right. It made so much sense. But now I look at it also from the point of view of an esoteric understanding, and I think the esoteric understanding has really helped to expand my understanding of why cognitive behavioural therapy works for so many people and works so quickly. So that's the backdrop really, and the basis of cognitive behavioural therapy in a very simple nutshell is that our thoughts have a direct impact on our emotions. Our emotions have a great effect on our behaviours, and our behaviours then will contribute to our thoughts. So when we look at our thinking, we can sometimes see that because of what we think and the thinking patterns that we have built up over the years, this contributes to a very negative worldview and emotional experience, and then consequently behavioural patterns. Or we might find that we can take a more pragmatic view to our thinking, a more analytical view to our thinking, where firstly we begin to identify what and how we think, and then we begin to apply tests to it as to the degree of accuracy of those thoughts. Are they accurate? If we say they are, on what evidence do we base that? And if they're not accurate, how do we need to change them so that they do reflect accurately what is happening? And what happens is, as we learn to recognize and control our thoughts and think more accurately, that we see changes in in our emotional and our behavioural lives. Okay, so again, in a nutshell, so there's more to it than that, obviously. But the important thing that the esoteric understanding of the mind has brought to me is the added dimension of understanding that it brings. So let me just share with you, and I'm sure I've done this in my other videos, my current belief of what the mind is and what the thoughts are in relation to the mind. So if you've watched any of my videos, you probably will have heard me say that my belief is that we are a being of three parts. Well, at least three parts. We are a divine spark, the spark of life, which is divinity within us, around which, so let's say we'll call that spirit if you like, around which individuality forms. Now, we might call that soul, or we may have other words for it, but that the spirit is eternal, never ending. It was never born, will never die. It always was, as part of divinity. But that, as part of the individuation process, a soul comes into being in as much as it starts to accumulate its own experience through many lives. And so we have divine spark or spirit, we have soul, which is the growing individuated consciousness. Now some will say the soul is the higher self, others will say no, it isn't the higher self. So, you know, you may have your own views on that, and I won't go into that now. So we have spirit, soul, body, and obviously the body relates to one life only. So whilst our spirit is immortal, whilst our soul is the individuated consciousness that we acquire through many lives, and so is also immortal, the body isn't. The body lasts for one lifetime, and in order for that body to work, there has to be a mind controlling it. So the body is the servant of the mind. The body is the instrument of the mind interacting and gaining experience from life in the physical world. What then is the mind? And when I say mind, I guess I would include personality, thoughts, beliefs, memories of this life. What is the mind? Because often we think our mind is us, don't we? Because it's where our seat of consciousness seems to be, or where we think it is in our mind. But your mind is not you. Your personality is not you. Your thoughts are not you. When you say my mind, my thoughts, you're saying something that belongs to you. Now, if something belongs to you, it cannot be you. But we think that our minds and our thoughts are us. So, what is the mind? My esoteric belief is that the mind is the instrument of the soul, just as the body is the instrument of the mind. The mind is the program, if you like, that runs, which enables this body to interact with the physical world, which includes the personalities that we have built through our life experiences in this life, our thinking, our data analysis, if you like, of the things that we encounter. But the mind isn't you. The mind is the instrument of the soul. The soul is you. The soul, or the higher self, if you believe that they're the same thing, or if you don't, then the soul becomes the instrument of the higher self. So if the mind is the instrument of something, it shouldn't be left, should it, to run riot as though it were the master or the mistress. So your mind and your thoughts are your servant, not your master. Now this is the whole point of cognitive therapy, that people say, oh, I can't help it, I can't. It's not helpful to tell anybody to stop worrying, okay? But if you say to someone, I want you to stop thinking about that particular thing in that particular way, okay? They'll say, I can't help it. I can't help it. Because they believe, okay, that their thoughts are them, but they aren't. And we can help our thoughts because our thoughts are our servants. Thoughts are part of the mind, servant of the soul, instrument of the soul. But what is difficult is because we are so used to A, believing that our mind and our thoughts is us, and 2, because the mind is constantly chattering, constantly with us, constantly running our lives, it's very rare that we step back from our thoughts, from our thinking, and say, hang on a minute, is that right? So in our stream of consciousness, okay, we're constantly telling ourselves things that make us happy, things that make us sad, things that frighten us, but we don't ever, or rarely do we challenge those thoughts for accuracy. Now, the people that seem to have a balanced and I don't know, less turbulent life are those that can actually look at their thoughts and say, is that accurate? Is that right? Is there any basis to that fear that I have here? Because if we don't do this, if we cannot stand back from our thoughts and analyze them, then we are a slave to them. Whatever comes through our mind, we will react to it. If it's something that terrifies us, then we will be terrified. We will feel the emotion of terror and we will behave like a terrified person. And more often than not, if we were to identify what thought is causing that emotion, and if we were to look at it and say, let's take a scientific approach to this now. What am I thinking? On what basis do I conclude that this is true? And when we do that, 99% of the time we realise that our thinking is not accurate. But our mind, and particularly our body, is a very trusting thing. It believes what we tell it. If our mind tells our body, be terrified, usually our body will be terrified. If our mind tells our body, there's no reason to be terrified about that thought because that thought's not accurate. This is the accurate thought. This is the accurate account of the situation. Then our body reacts differently and our behaviour will react differently. So how do we do that then? Because when we're not used to doing something, it can seem as if it's impossible. When the person says to you, you know, I can't stop thinking about it, they may believe that they can't. They are telling themselves that they can't stop thinking about it, and they are believing themselves, and so they don't stop thinking about it. So, I mean, I'm not going to go into all of the techniques of cognitive therapy, but one of the easiest and first techniques that is taught to people who are undergoing cognitive behavioural therapy is notice your emotional shifts. So if you're okay and then suddenly you feel very low, or if you're okay and then suddenly you feel very scared, notice first the emotional shift. That's the first indicator that something's happening in your mind. And then, of course, the other thing is sometimes our thoughts go through our mind so quickly that they don't present as a single clear thought. They just flash through. We don't pick them up consciously, but subconsciously we do, and our body reacts to them. So people who are living in a permanent state of anxiety and terror, often it's because they're bombarded with negative automatic thoughts, is what they're called, which keep triggering these emotional responses in them. So first thing, notice an emotional shift. Secondly, try and discover what was happening right at that moment when you shifted. Was it a thought that you can identify? Was it not a thought but a mental image? Was it a memory? Was it a smell? What was it that triggered that emotional shift? And the more you do that, the better you will become at it, until you are able to say, this is what caused that emotional shift. And then once you've got it, once you've got the thought, you can start looking at it and testing it for accuracy. So as I say, there's lots of wonderful techniques in cognitive behavioural therapy, and if you are someone who is given to low mood or anxiety or even phobias, cognitive therapy works very well. And it's the sort of thing that you can become your own therapist if you can read and understand techniques and processes. Then you can therapize yourself. But it is a therapy of action. You have to do things. There is homework that you can't just, at least not at first, you can't just sit and think this therapy through. You have to do it. But what made it more powerful for me, tenfold, 100-fold, was understanding that I am not my mind. That my mind is the instrument of the soul. And that is what I am. I am not my jumble of often chaotic thoughts. I'm not my physical responses of fear and doubt and those things that sometimes assail me. And of course they will, because we're not perfect, we're not perfected yet. But understanding ourselves and understanding what our mind is enables us and empowers us not to be scared, not to be frightened, not to be like a cork on the sea of life, which goes wherever the current takes it. So anyway, I think I'm going to stop now. I hope that I've made some sort of sense. And as always, thank you for taking the time to listen, and hope you find something of interest. I'll catch you guys again soon. Bye for now.